Hey folks, this is John Miller, Executive Editor with WV News. We would like to welcome you to Ask the Experts, featuring John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management. John is the founder, owner, and certified wealth strategist at Beacon Wealth Management. You can find out more at bwmwv.com. And now live from the studios of the Exponent Telegram in Clarksburg, West Virginia, let's Ask the Expert. Welcome to Ask the Expert with John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management. John, we've talked about various parts of sound financial portfolio. Some folks like to keep things high risk, but you've always advocated a more rounded approach. One of the things we've heard from viewers, they want to talk about the fixed rate opportunities out there now.
Yeah. You know what, John? It is crazy how much it's changed. Because if you look 3 or 4 years ago, interest rates for fixed opportunities were 1%, 2%, and 3%. And when you look at that, it's not very appealing to lock those rates in. But as the Fed rates changed, next thing we know, we started seeing things moving at 4%. Then we started seeing things at 5%. Well, now, I saw what I call fixed rate annuities, multi-year guaranteed annuity rates at over 6%. And that's a game changer because, for all retirees, it's about income. It's about income off of portfolio. And so as a simple analogy, if you have $1 million and you could get 6% fixed rate, well, that's $60,000 a year. You compare that to getting 2%, well, that's 3 times the amount. And so what you got to be thinking about is, okay, wait a minute. This is an opportunity to increase your potential lifestyle by 3 times the amount and not elevate the risk. That's a big thing because, we can get more money, but it's at what cost of risk. And so if we can do that without a cost of risk and use a fixed product, that's a very attractive option for a portion of people's money.
How we go back and we've talked about this portion here, maybe invest more high risk, this portion more reasonable, that type of thing. As the fixed rate opportunities have changed, do you see more people seizing those? You know
what? People don't know yet. That's really the big problem is that it has changed so rapidly and so quick. I mean, you think about this. For 25 years, we had a low interest rate environment. And so because of that, people just assume that that's what you get. There's no thing out there or not an option. And so what we've always been a proponent of is that if you're going to take money out for your portfolio, that we want to take it from something that's not going to lose money. And so the higher the fixed rate can get, the better off we're going to be. And so what I like to see is people have a portion of their portfolio in a fixed rate option that they can pull their income from. I also like to see people have investing because one thing we know is you got to offset inflation. One thing I always think about is I always ask, hey, think about the cost of your first home and think about the most recent car you purchased. If that doesn't wake you up to inflation, what you have to realize is if you're living 20 or 30 years, things are going to go up. And so what we have to make sure is we have a healthy balance. How do we get an income that's worry-free? How do we get growth to offset inflation? And then, of course, a couple other things that people always tell me is how do we fight the cost of long-term care? And then also, how do we pass things onto our family in the most tax advantageous way? And so when we come up with strategies, we got to think about those 4 types of things because those are the 4 most common things. And we got to think, okay, how does this help somebody? And so when it comes to longevity, the fixed rate is a big game changer for longevity planning because the biggest fear every retiree has is outliving their income. No matter who you are, that's the number one fear. And so the higher we can get without elevating the risk, the better off the client is going to be.
You mentioned that. Fortunately, my mom's still with us and everything, and she retired from the federal government. And, but she is, when we have conversations, she's always worried about outliving that income. And, what's your advice when people come to see you? And I think it's important people need to realize that he's not just here on our webcast or on TV. John is doing this every day and available to you. So reach out to him and sit down and talk with him. What do you tell people when they come to see you? What's the best approach to get things started?
Well, the best approach is to start with a conversation. No different than going to a doctor. I have no idea what your situation is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get to know you. And, and I don't expect you to know everything. I don't even expect you to be able to list your goals. What I am going to do is we're going to have a healthy conversation about different financial topics that I think are relevant to people in your situation. From that conversation, I'm going to be able to identify areas that I think are potential train wrecks or areas that I think are missed opportunities because you don't do this every day. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how can we add value to your financial situation. Because at the end of the day, this is about you. If we can't add value to you, then we don't do anything for you. And so it all starts by, let's get together, call us, let's get together, let's plan a time, let's spend time getting to know each other. I think that's the very first thing because we got to determine, are we going to be a fit for each other?
Yeah, the other thing I think it's important because we talk a lot about, when people are getting ready to retire and things like that. But really, you can do the most for somebody when they get with you early in their careers, right?
Well, absolutely. Compound interest. If you're a young person, let's say 30, absolutely, that'd be wonderful if you had that type of foresight. But I got to tell you, most of the people, until they reach that midpoint, about 50, they're not really thinking about it. Here's what normally triggers people is that someone has a father or a mother who passes away, and they realize, wait a minute, what am I going to do with this? Or they have a coworker who unexpectedly decided to retire or unexpectedly had to be disabled. And that's what triggers people. They give them that urgency. But it's usually not to 50. But there's no doubt about it. If we have a business owner or professional who says, hey, look, I've got the foresight to plan 30 years, absolutely, that's going to be the winners, because they had the most time on their side. But the one thing I tell people is, do not get delusioned by the fact that if you think you're 60 or 70, that it's too late. In all actuality, that's where the majority of our planning is done, simply because that's where it's the most complex. I mean, think about this. When you're younger, you have children at home, bills to pay, okay? There's a lot of things you got to do just to live day to day. But when you get older, now you've got income that you don't want to outlive. Now you got inflation. Now you got healthcare issues. Now you have estate planning. You got legacy planning. So your situation, and it's the time where you have the most money in your life. So your situation is the most complex. And at the same time, it's now where you don't have time on your side. Because the one thing I know is when you're a 70-year-old and there's a market correction of 50% and you're caught in that, well, your chances of surviving that or even recovering from that is much, much less likely than someone who's 25 and 30 who has 30 and 40 years. And so what we have to do, the margin of error is a lot bigger. It's like coming down that mountain. More people die coming off the mountain than actually hiking up the mountain.
Good point. Good point. Back on fixed rate opportunities to close out.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on them right now? They're in really good shape.
Oh, they're in great shape. I mean, right now I'm seeing rates, over 5%, over 6%. This is unprecedented territory. I mean, we haven't seen those types of fixed rate returns for over 25 years. And so what I tell people is because people say, you think those will last forever? I said, no way. Because what we have to understand is this is all part of the Fed manipulation. And as the Fed changes things, they want to go back to a lower Fed rate. And when they go back to a lower Fed rate, that means fixed rates are going to return back down. And so what I tell people is if you have a chance and you're looking for something that is more secure and that's something that's more fixed interest with a portion of your portfolio, then now may be an opportunity to talk about it. And what I tell you is don't worry about whether you know or not. Let's just get together. Let's talk. Let's start the conversation. We'll help you figure out exactly what is the right amount in each proportion or in the appropriate portion for each type of investment.
Great insight on fixed rate opportunities right now. As John said, they're at 25-year highs, I believe, over 6%. I'm sure that a lot of people would be interested in that. John, we want to thank you again for joining us on Ask the Expert. And we thank our audience as well. Ask the Experts, featuring John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management. John is the founder, owner, and certified wealth strategist at Beacon Wealth Management. You can find out more at bwmwv.com.